Christmas at Rawlinson End, Part 1. Cannibalism at the Synagogue. Or, you can have your cake and eat it. The story so far. Sir Henry has been reading Home Doctor, and with his characteristic generosity to the underprivileged, offered his converted garage workshop and newly acquired expertise to the needy villagers. Those owing rent to Rawlinson End invent all manner of disease for Henry's ready knife. Well, actually a well-honed sabre sterilised with the breath of a rabid dog. Great Aunt Florrie turns her hand to lobotomy, high-bottomy, and occasionally medium-bottomy, which involves going into a trance with the patient. Lobotomy is misunderstood by some of the illiterates, and Florrie is horrified when presented with several rude country bums. Old Seth One Tooth actually stood on his head, or tried to, because he had a boil on the back of his neck.
I don't want to seem morbid, but did you see his face before he died?
Asked Gerald.
Horrible! Looked as though he died of fear.
Ralph is in mid-Atlantic and Sandra still smells. Now read on ... It was true. Ralph is coming home. For the first time in 12 years, and the idea of seeing Roxanne stirs and excites him. Roxanne! Her young breasts like hunting dogs straining at the leash. He wondered if anything had changed. A dozen years yet it seemed, only the day before yesterday when, clear-eyed, spruce and eager, or Bruce-eyed, drunk and Frank Highfield, he'd left for South America. He stared down moodily at the green-scaled flying fish, skipping and fluttering over the waves. A po-faced steward lay under the bed. A po-faced steward reminded him that second sitting for luncheon was already well entrenched in the entree. The man had the simian posture and cerebral stature of a pygmy. Ralph wasn't hungry. A middle-aged drunk in a Bavarian hat belched onto the deck and offered Ralph a swig from a greasy bottle of entre deux legs. When Ralph declined, he tried to kiss him. Ralph refused, so the man bit his leg. It was extremely painful. And after some minutes, Ralph said, "Oh, all right then." But the man seemed to have lost interest and started yodeling over the rail, some curious song about talented tortoises.
"Oh, please, dinna torture my totty. It isn't his fault at all. He may seem a teeny bit naughty, but he's played at the Albert Hall. He's nae good wish things, mandolins, violins. He just can't fret the strings, but sometimes he sings, and it's no that he's naughty. Piano's his forte. Apart from that, he can't play bugger all."
He then told Ralph an obscure joke about a giant octopus that left awful squid marks on the seabed. Ralph didn't get it. Meanwhile, back at the great house, Hubert Maynard arrived. Dear, dear Hubert. In his middle 40s, and yet he was still unusual. He would throw himself naked onto the lawn in a northerly direction parallel to the earthly axis, and lying on his back with that loathsome Roman clock face tattooed around his lower and private parts, tell the time, with astounding accuracy if he thought about Jean Harlow.
"Look, no hands, Auntie,"
he would screech.
"Now check that, my darling Ken, huh?"
In the winter, he tried with a candle, but it hurt, and he was invariably hours late anyway. So he contented himself by standing in the main hall and inviting visitors to stand on his feet. He would then tell their weight in a dreadful monotone, and at the same time present them with a cigarette card depicting steam engines or early flying machines. Henry tried with him and spent a whole afternoon persuading him of the future in hat stands. But when Henry mentioned the umbrellas, Hubert told him where to stuff it. Naturally, as an Englishman, Henry stoutly accepted. Anyway, he told Hubert that if he didn't put a sock on the sundial business, he'd soon be singing soprano. In Southampton, Ralph had docked. He expected Timothy and Letitia to be there. What strange children they were. And that nasty friend of theirs with a squint, Gerald. Clapton knows. What went on behind the locked nursery doors after they chummed up with him? Always bringing pets into the house. Must be healthy for children, he supposed. But that thing they'd made, a horrid hybrid cross between a gorilla and a parrot, and they'd let it loose in the maze. It was feathered, huge, and immensely strong, and would spring from the privet at odd moments and grasp one round the neck and ask, "Who's a pretty boy, then?" Still, it kept the tramps off the premises. Then there was that weird chant of theirs, arms linked, and to the rhythm of knives, something about poodles and chopping.
We are three vivisectionists. We go out at night with big brown sacks, commandeering little cats. They sometimes bite, they sometimes scratch, but in the end they meet their match with a poodle. A poodle of little or no consequence, secreted at night as he peed up a door. The poor little... He was somebody's pet, but with scalpels and needles no more.
We're convivial.
We're convivial vivisectionists. We take out animals' brains, we prize them out and peep inside, and
we put them back again.
We put them back again.
Ho-hum. No welcoming committee. But ironically, he was closer to family than he knew, for his brother Arbuthnot was nearby, at first earnestly hemming his way out to sea in a dinghy, but now in trouble at a place called Dead Man's Point. The currents there were strong, treacherous and unpredictable. He was soaked to the shirt, and his sandwich tin floated in the scuppers. Dead Man's Point, that name! A memory chord strummed softly. Of course, he remembered the accident, then darkness, and the soft, probing hand of the doctor. At least he said he was a doctor. "Looks like a bad case of Alice," he said. "We're not sure how it gets into the bloodstream, but Christopher Robin went down with it." It was then that Ralph noticed the tiny boat and heard his brother's screams for help. Tossing down his suitcases, in moments, with many powerful strokes, Ralph combed his hair and smartened up a stray cat. This was unusual, because Ralph hated combing his hair. Then he gouged and bullied his way towards the rank and got into a taxi. Tomorrow, the fate of Arbuthnot, the feet of Sandra. Won't you come home, Israeli? Uncle Otto gets blotter. 3 Cohens in a fountain, and rabbis keep falling on my head.